Hey, good people. This is your 6th District Councilwoman, Raleigh Booker, and I am here with Dr. Antonette Payne, Esquire. So, Dr. Payne, I'm just going to call her Tony for the rest of this video because I actually know her. She is my friend. Is an immigration attorney, and she also serves the 4th District on Fort Wayne Community Schools Board of Trustees. So, as the 6th District Councilwoman, there is a lot of overlap in the community that we serve. And when I have questions about immigration or any sort of policy, this is the person that I go to ask my questions and get answers. And so we were having a conversation today, and I just thought it would be a good idea to kind of share that conversation or part of that conversation that we were having with all of you so that you could get some questions answered and so we can get some clarity on a lot of the things that people are concerned about in our community. So I am going to yield my time to Tony to talk a little bit about what she does as an immigration attorney, the type of clients that she sees. There's different types of immigration pathways so that you have an idea of the types of clients that she serves and the families that she helps.
So in my work, I work with a lot of family. I do a lot of family-based petitions. So if you're looking to transition from different status to a green card, if you are looking to do asylum because you have entered our country and are seeking refuge from the country you're from, so we work with asylum. When there are opportunities for temporary protective status, we have done those petitions. We do petitions. So if you're a victim of violence or victim of a crime, there is VAWA or U visas. So there's a lot of different avenues. They will be very fact specific about what your situation is. And so usually when I have people come to me for a consultation, we'll talk about what options they have depending on their status currently and then what status they're looking to pursue. So again, that will be very fact specific.
So Tony and I serve one of the most diverse quadrants in Fort Wayne. We represent and serve and live in a community that has a lot of immigrants and people from other countries. So many are different countries are represented in our districts. And so recently I learned in the news that TPS status was ending for people from certain countries. And Burma was one of those countries that TPS status was ending for. And so I did some research and found out that maybe less than 4,000 people across the country have that particular TPS status. So I reached out to Tony to get more information about TPS status, what that means, and how that will potentially impact families locally. So can you share a little bit more about that? What is TPS status and what does that potentially mean for some of the families that that we serve here?
So temporary protective status, which is what TPS stands for, is a designation by the government. They'll look at the situation in particular countries and decide that individuals from those countries need temporary protective status here in the United States. And it allows them to work in the United States. It allows them to be in the United States without fear of removal. And it is designated for a specific period of time. And usually those are renewed over time in 18-month increments. And we've had several countries that have recently ended their TPS status. One being Burma, as you mentioned, and then also Haiti on February 3rd, which then there's a current lawsuit that has stopped that from going into effect, the end of that, and it was just recently appealed by the current administration. So that's still something that will play out over the next, few months at least to see where that status ends up. What that means is that those families that if temporary status does end, if they have not tried to get into a different type of status, then that means that they are subject to removal from the United States if they didn't have a different status. Now, speaking specifically of the Burmese population that you speak of, many came here under refugee status, so they have legal status in the United States. I think the The statistic that I heard earlier was that 98% of the Burmese population in Fort Wayne have some other legal status. So that is not something that should be a great concern for the majority of families here in Fort Wayne.
Okay. And so, for those families or for those community members who want to advocate for those families or serve them in different kinds of ways, if they have questions about that, where can they go to find answers or support about their status and their options?
So there's a few places that I would suggest. One is there are community organizations here that serve immigrant populations, such as the Mani, Catholic Charities, or reach out to an immigration attorney who deals in those areas. I do. I know there's a number of others who work with people with temporary protected status. I will caution to make sure that you're going to an actual lawyer or a organization that actually serves the immigrant population. What we're seeing is an increase in fraud. People are taking advantage of the fear that families have, and they are extorting thousands upon thousands of dollars from families, and not necessarily giving them any additional support or help that they need, not giving them either inaccurate information, incomplete information, or sometimes just straight out fraud and taking their money and not actually doing anything at all. So with any licensed attorney, you can search them up and you can search their bar number to make sure they're actually a licensed attorney. This is for any state. You can search to see that they're actually a licensed attorney. With the nonprofits, you can look them up to see that they're actually a nonprofit that is recognized either by the state or on the national level.
Wow. So there are people who are taking advantage
a lot
of this fear, of the misinformation, of all the confusion.
I've seen a lot of fake green card applications. I've even sadly seen where they've had a fake court hearing. They thought they were at their court hearing. They've done them via internet, and there's a fake judge and a fake everything, and then what happens is that person misses their actual court date and they get a removal order in absentia, meaning you didn't show up to your court date. So please, 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 if I can say anything, make sure you are dealing with an actual attorney, especially if you're in removal proceedings, and that you are aware and up to date on your court dates.
You know, I think you pretty much addressed just the question about the TPS status, and what that means for our community as far as our Burmese population and also our Haitian population, because we do have more refugees from Haiti here now. You mentioned that there is like a stay. What exactly does that mean, and how long is that in effect for?
We don't know how long that's in effect for. So a judge has halted the end of TPS for several different countries, but specifically this particular case is about Haiti, ending TPS for Haiti. It's indefinite. What indefinite means is until some other decision is made. Today I just read that there has been an appeal made by the administration to try to reverse that so that the end of TPS can go into effect. What that means, it's going to play out in the court system. So once the next court decides whether that's that we extend TPS or that we end TPS, that'll be the next decision. If they decide that TPS ends, that'll be the effective date that ends. Right now, what I can say as far as a practical standpoint is if you go onto the USCIS page under TPS for Haiti, it will give a blurb about how there's a court that has halted the end of TPS, and so work authorization continues while this is pending. What I am seeing a little confusion about for our BMV is whether or not to extend licenses. Most people who with TPS, their licenses last as long as TPS lasts. So for the Haitian community, a lot of that ended on February 3rd, and so their driver's license expired on February 3rd. And I've had clients come to me. I tried to go to the BMV and renew it because of this stay by the courts, and the DMV is saying, hey, well, we don't have any guidance on this, so we're not going to extend these driver's license. So there is a bit of confusion there about whether or not the driver's licenses will be renewed, while we do know that they are allowing the work authorization to continue.
So my next question is, if they're not renewed and people are trying to get to work and they don't have valid licenses, does that put their immigration status or their TPS status at jeopardy?
What it does is, in Indiana, driving without a valid license is a misdemeanor. If you are stopped and your driver's license is expired, you don't have a driver's license, you never had a driver's license, you can be arrested for because it's a misdemeanor, and we have seen that happen in with some of our community members. So one of the things that we've encouraged, because I've been asked by nonprofits and other organizations, like, what can we do to help our communities?
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are offering to drive people to where they need to go. We've had people offer to get groceries for people. I believe NeighborLink has allowed that to be part of their program as well. So if people want to help in that way, NeighborLink is a opportunity to help your neighbors while there's this transition.
I mean, it really just sounds like community members and organizations stepping up to look out for each other, which is, I mean, that's what needs to be done right now, where everything is so confusing and people are trying to figure it out. I've seen so many people who are just concerned and want to help. They're trying to figure out, what can I do to help in different situations. So I asked you about the license and the potential for people, like how does that put their immigration status or their TPS status or whatever at risk? Because currently we are there is a Senate bill that is authored by Senator Liz Brown, who is part of the Northeast delegation. So she is a senator from Fort Wayne, Indiana, who has proposed a bill that has advanced from the Senate and is in the House or headed to the House. Can you tell us about that bill and what that would mean for someone who doesn't have the right status if they get arrested?
So my understanding of the bill is to require local law enforcement to enforce or to cooperate. Let me say enforce. It cooperate with immigration enforcement, and what that means, as far as one of the provisions in there is about ICE holds. Currently, what happens if you are pulled over, you do not have a driver's license, you can be arrested for it is a misdemeanor. What would happen is, then once you're in lockup, instead of being released on bond, they would hold you under an immigration hold. With an immigration hold, ICE has 48 hours to detain the person or to pick the person up from the local law enforcement and then take them to immigration detention. And that would make it so that it's not optional for the local law enforcement to do the hold, but actually mandatory that they do the hold.
So as it stands, like currently, if someone doesn't have legal status and they're stopped by the police, they could go to lockup and then they could be released. But if this bill passes, then local authorities would have to hold them so that ICE could come and take them
if they do not have a legal status.
If they don't have a legal status. So I know a lot of people were concerned when they heard about TPS status ending for our Burmese neighbors, and then also just because Chicago is so close to us and all of the crazy stuff that's going on in Chicago. Minneapolis is not that far, and so people worried about ICE, potentially coming here. I mean, because anything is possible in the year of our Lord 2026 in America. So it's my understanding that currently we have how many ICE agents here in Fort Wayne?
From the information I received, there are only 2 designated for Fort Wayne, and that they are tasked with enforcing those who have already been ordered removed and picking up. So those who have a warrant or an ICE warrant to pick them up because they have already gone through their process and have been ordered removed from the United States, and now they're enforcing the removal.
I want to switch gears and start talking about. We've been talking about families, the impact of some of these things on families who don't have legal status, but we also know that there have been so many cases of people who have been detained who actually are citizens or have some sort of legal status. That has kind of fueled some of people's fears and anxiety about what is potentially going to happen in Fort Wayne. One huge concern is ICE going into schools. Just recently at Southside High School, for sure, I know because my son goes to Southside, and I actually saw, our young people after they did their walkout. They were on Calhoun and Rudisill with their signs and protesting. So proud of them for standing up. So proud of them for taking a stand on a huge issue. We talk about how complacent sometimes our kids are and that sort of thing, but just to see them organize themselves and take a stand and support a community of people who are being terrorized in other parts of the country, I was filled with pride, and it was Southside. Go Southside. You are a trustee of Fort Wayne Community Schools, and I know that in this conversation you don't represent the board, but as a board member who knows policy, and then also as an immigration attorney, can you just inform people of what that policy is? What happens if people are concerned that ICE might show up at the school? How would the school handle that? How should parents handle that? What do we need to know about our rights and how we can protect our kids?
So Fort Wayne Community Schools, one, I will say they have been very well about putting their policy out. It's on the website. You can go to fortwaynecommunityschools.org under their family assistance page. You'll see there's several tabs for different family assistance, but under there is an immigration tab, and in there it talks about their policy. And the board resolution was from 2017, and it has not changed. And what that is access to information about students has to have parent permission. As far as access to the school itself, just as if any adult or any person tried to go to a school, they have to have ID. They have to show why they need to be into the schools. There is not going to be open access to anyone to go into our schools. And that families should feel safe and secure sending their kids to school, because we do not have a policy that would allow anyone into the schools who should not be in the schools. And that's for safety. Across the board, it's about safety for our kids and making sure that no one has access. We've all seen the things that have happened in schools recently. No one has access to the schools.
So does that include outside of schools, like parking lots and
things
like that?
We have no control of what happens once you lose school property. So once you hit the sidewalks, that's not under our control of what we can regulate, right? You're on public property. There are other options. I would say reach out to the schools and your principals if you are concerned and would like other options. I can't say which ones you should choose. That's why I say best to talk to your school to see what is best for you and your family. But there are other options within Fort Wayne Community Schools. We have the virtual academy if people feel like they would like to prefer to be online, if it feels more secure for you. There are other options, but that's something you should work out with your school. As difficult as it may be, it's important to have a plan in place. If you are concerned that you or a family member may be detained and you have children, regardless of the size of the children, that may come home and there's not a parent there when they get home, to have a contingency plan, whether that's a guardianship in place that someone else can move into that space quickly and be able to care for your child and be able to do the things that you need to do for your child. as far as your property, your home, your businesses, having a power of attorney so that someone can handle your financial business if you are away. Those are things that I would suggest having in place. I do, encourage a lot of our nonprofits have asked what they could do. Those are things that maybe they can assist with if they have someone on staff who can do guardianship paperwork or power of attorneys. Those are things that would be helpful for that community to be able to have in place. So if they need to, or if they are detained and they still need to be able to pay their bills, they need to be able to get their children medical care. They're having that um, permission to treat forms, things that would help make sure that they can continue as much as possible in that person's absence. If you have children who are U.S. citizens, making sure that they have their passports, getting those done. And I know that sometimes if you have a mixed status family, sometimes people who do not have status are a little fearful of going in to do the passport application. It is possible to do a notarized letter giving permission to the other parent to get the passport so that you don't have to go in yourself. I mean, many of our families are mixed status, right? You have a U.S. citizen parent, and you have a parent who does not have status, current legal status, and so if that parent is fearful of entering into a post office or a federal building, they can do the notarized letter to do the passport. Parent is detained and or deported, child is left behind. Parents want their child to either get to them or to eventually, if the child went with them in the beginning, come back. That is a proof of status, their citizenship, so that they can come between home country and back into the United States.
Got it. It's easier to move back and forth.
And like a recent conversation with someone was removed, and the kids were still here. They're trying to get their kids back to them in their home country, but that's an issue now because we don't have passports for the child to go into the home country of the parents.
And because it is rapidly changing, and because there's a lot of misinformation and just fear about what is going on, make sure you really connect with someone who is either one of the nonprofits that serve our immigrant and refugee population, or an attorney whose job it is to keep up with those sorts of things, to make sure that you are getting the right information. And so that as a community, we can support the people who can be potentially impacted and affected by some of the things that are going on concerning immigration and changes in refugee status. So I hope this helps. I hope it answers some questions. I hope it puts some things in perspective. I hope it eases some minds, but I also hope that it helps to fuel our community to really step up and support each other in the ways that we actually can. And also, I hope it encourages some people to really speak up. There are certain things, there was the one particular bill that was mentioned that is being discussed or being voted on during this legislative session. If that is something that you want to do some more research on, it was Senate Bill 76. Senate Bill 76. If you go on Mad Voters website, I'm sure they have a breakdown of it. They keep track of different bills that are going through the session. They provide information about it. And then you can also figure out who do you contact. So contact your state representative or your senator. At this point, it's the representative, since it's going to the House side now, and let them know how you feel about this bill. Let them know where you live, who you are, how it will impact your community, your family, or whatever. You can do that with a phone call or an email. Stay on top of these things. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to show up. for our neighbors and the people in our community. I hope you found value in this. If you did, please like it, please share it so that we can continue to educate our community about what's going on and then also what's possible.